Building an online course usually follows a predictable, frustrating pattern. You spend dozens of hours wrestling with learning management software, recording videos, and organizing PDFs, only to launch the module and discover your students are confused, disengaged, and missing the core concepts. There is a way to bypass that trial and error. Instead of building first and hoping it works, you can construct a framework that is actively shaped and verified by your actual students before you ever log into your course software. This process loop represents the 5 phases of design thinking: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. It is a systematic way to build learning experiences around real human behaviors. To execute this today, you only need 3 things: a stack of paper, a simple pen, and 1 prospective student. By moving your design process out of isolation and testing ideas in the real world immediately, you ensure the architecture of your course actually aligns with how your students learn. Step 1 is empathize. You need to gather raw data directly from 2 or 3 prospective learners through brief, informal interviews. Structure these conversations in 3 stages. Set a comfortable stage. Dig deep to capture specific stories about their past learning experiences, and finish on a high note by asking what their ideal course looks like. This text graphic shows the exact phrasing you need to trigger those stories. Start your prompts with open-ended stems like, "How do you?" or "What is it like to?" Resist the urge to ask questions that can be answered with a simple yes or no. Closed-ended questions shut down the narrative flow and hide the underlying frustrations you need to uncover. When you get a student to narrate a specific time they struggled or succeeded, you capture their emotional and behavioral challenges. That raw data provides the empirical foundation you need to build a targeted learner persona. That brings us to step 2, define. Look at your interview notes and group similar complaints, goals, and habits together. You will use these recurring patterns to create a composite learner persona, a single profile representing your average student. Once you have that persona, you must translate it into a specific, actionable problem statement. This statement will act as the blueprint for every design decision you make from here on out. This equation displays the formula for a problem statement. It requires 3 variables: a specific learner, a need, and an insight. For example, a nursing student needs to practice without risk because they experience intense floor anxiety with live patients. You then reframe that equation into a narrow question. How might we allow nursing students to practice without risk so they can overcome floor anxiety? Locking in that single target filters out irrelevant features and prevents scope creep. Now we move to step 3, ideate. Sit down with a colleague and generate a high volume of potential solutions by asking, "What if?" Do not pause to consider if your software can actually build the idea. Evaluating technical limitations during this phase immediately stalls the brainstorming process. Instead, encourage lateral thinking. Ask, what if the learning activity felt like a treasure hunt, where students had to locate clues scattered across different online resources? By strictly deferring judgment and ignoring software constraints, you bypass the rigid, generic templates most learning management systems force you into and uncover the structural solutions your students actually need. Step 4 is prototype. Take the 2 best concepts from your brainstorming session and map them out on paper as a low-fidelity storyboard. You don't need artistic skill for this. Use basic analog shorthand. Draw a rectangle with a play button to represent a video, a lined square for a reading manual, and a simple checklist box for an interactive quiz. This draft is entirely disposable. You should invest minimal time and 0 financial resources into creating it, so you can abandon it without hesitation if it doesn't work. This wireframe shows how a sequence might flow. A learner watches an introductory video, follows a directional arrow to a policy document, and then proceeds to a knowledge quiz. Mapping these interconnected tasks on paper physically lays out the student's journey. It exposes logical gaps and awkward transitions early, long before you spend money on video production or custom coding. The final step is test and implement. Place your paper storyboard directly in front of the exact learners you interviewed in step 1. Ask them to navigate the sequence and strictly instruct them to think out loud as their eyes move from one task to the next. You want to hear their real-time reactions. This checklist displays the formal evaluation criteria you need to judge the prototype. You are looking to see if the sequence is useful, usable, findable, credible, desirable, accessible, and valuable to the student. Watch for specific reactions. Note where they find the interface cohesive, where a task triggers deep cognitive engagement, and whether the language establishes a genuine emotional connection. When they get confused, take your pen, cross out the offending section of the paper, and redraw a new flow right in front of them based on their immediate feedback. Running this low-stakes feedback loop reveals the structural bottlenecks of your course. Identifying and neutralizing those errors on paper prevents you from building a flawed module that would otherwise frustrate dozens of future students. You started with a blank page and a high risk of student disengagement. Now you hold a tangible, heavily iterated paper storyboard. This blueprint possesses structural integrity specifically because the people who actually need to learn from it were the ones who tested and refined its mechanics. With a verified plan in hand, you can finally log into your learning software and start building, confident that the architecture is sound. Applying the design thinking process ensures that every hour you spend developing your course produces an educational framework calibrated to the actual reality of your students.